what's up? Sanisa Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A closer look at the WBC's ruling as it pertains to Alicia Baumgardner's drug testing case. They've placed her on probation for 1 year. The decision revealed this past Monday did not clear Baumgardner outright, but also will not result in her being stripped of the WBC title. No word on what happens with the others. Based on the adverse finding in Ms. Baumgardner's A sample, and considering all factors both sides presented, the WBC arrived at the conclusion that there was no conclusive justification to reject the accuracy of the adverse finding based on the evidence and arguments, the response, and supplemental information presented. The WBC declared in a statement, however, that same evidence and arguments do not conclusively support Ms. Baumgardner's intentional ingestion of masterolone for performance-enhancing purposes.
That's the part that a lot of people have a problem with.
The test by itself ain't a mind reader. It can't tell you what a person was or wasn't aware of at the time. All it can tell you is what is there. So when you say she's clear, because the test can't prove whether or not she knowingly took something, well, you could literally apply that logic to every anti-doping case.
Revolving door policy.
The WBC's official ruling is that the accuracy and validity of the adverse finding justifies placing Ms. Baumgardner on probation for 1 year from the date that the sample that yielded the adverse finding was collected, or until July 12th of this year. Ms. Baumgardner shall be subjected to a series of random anti-doping tests at her own expense, which frequency shall be determined by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. If there is an adverse finding concerning any of Ms. Baumgardner's samples or a whereabouts failure during her probationary period and for 6 months thereafter, the WBC shall immediately and without further inquiry take immediate action against Ms. Baumgardner under the WBC's Clean Boxing Program protocol. Ms. Baumgardner and the WBC will work together to design and implement her participation in an anti-doping prevention program directed to active female boxers.
And what action could the WBC take against Alicia in that scenario?
The most they can do as an alphabet organization is strip her of their title, but without an official suspension from a local commission, they can't actually stop her from boxing, which is one of the nuances of Alicia's case, that the Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission never actually suspended her.
Boxing's fragmented infrastructure makes for a lot of confusion and questions.
What you need to understand is you don't actually need an alphabet organization to sanction your fight in order to box. But what you do need to box is a boxing license, and the only way to get that is through a state commission, like the New York State Athletic Commission or the Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission.
And they never suspended her.
Why is the question. No decision was made yet by the Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission, who has failed to respond to several inquiries from boxing scene and several involved parties seeking comment. The inclusion of VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, is in line with the WBC's Clean Boxing Program, CBP. VADA was not involved in any way in the aforementioned testing, which was conducted by Drug Free Sport. They're the ones who collected the samples.
But moving forward, she will be tested by VADA as part of her probation, her probationary period with the WBC.
As you can imagine, without an official suspension coming down from the Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission, that could make it difficult for the sanctioning bodies to know what to do. How should they proceed? How do they penalize her for something she hasn't been suspended for? As even with the WBC's ruling, any official suspension can only come from a presiding commission. Sanctioning bodies only have the authority to relieve a boxer of their title reign and or disallow them to participate in title elimination bouts, but they can't stop you from obtaining a boxing license. Only a commission can do that, and the commission that presided over her fight, they didn't do anything. They didn't suspend her, so she's free to fight.
whether people like it or not.
The next steps for Baumgardner were not immediately known, although she has outstanding mandatory title defenses. Former WBC lightweight champion Delphine Persoon is the mandatory challenger for 3 of the 4 sanctioning bodies, including the WBC. Persoon's team has eagerly awaited the outcome of the ongoing investigations and plans to immediately enforce her status to ensure a title shot is her next bout.
Given her age and the intensity of her last fight opposite the ring Shin, I wondered if Delphine Persoon was going to call it a career. I wondered if she was going to call it quits, but it seems that she's sticking around, and she wants her title shot.
Stylistically, that's a very intriguing fight. Alicia Baumgardner is a lot younger and a lot fresher than Delphine Persoon, but stylistically, that's the pure boxer versus the pressure fighter, with Delphine being the pressure fighter and Alicia being the pure boxer.
That stylistic matchup usually favors the pressure fighter, so the style of the fight, the style of the match, the dynamic, it's on Delphine's side, even if time isn't.
As stated, she's a lot older and a lot more weathered than Alicia Baumgardner, as well as the added benefit of facing a common opponent between herself and Katie Taylor. Lest we forget, 3 or 4 years ago, Delphine gave Katie all she could handle in their 2 fights.
She did.
To some people, she arguably beat Katie. She unofficially gave Katie her first professional loss. It is a chance for Alicia Baumgardner to come back and come back in style against a formidable fighter and a familiar face, but she will be under scrutiny because of all this anti-doping stuff. Without an official suspension from the presiding commission for her last fight, it does look like she's free to fight. Nobody can stop her, but that doesn't mean people aren't going to scrutinize her, how she looks, and how she fights. Her next fight is going to be under the magnifying glass.
And we still have to see what the other sanctioning bodies decide to do, the other alphabet organizations. It's a sordid affair.
In men's cruiserweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Breidis, Zurdo, Ramirez are set to fight in separate cruiserweight bouts for separate titles, and the IBF purse bid, as a result, has been cancelled. The IBF initially ordered them to fight each other after they stripped Opetaia for no good reason. BoxingScene.com has confirmed that the IBF has canceled a purse bid hearing previously scheduled for this past Tuesday to have determined promotional rights for the ordered vacant cruiserweight title fight. The session was removed after the IBF received confirmation of Ramirez's withdrawal from the process through Golden Boy Promotions. As previously reported by Boxing Scene, Mexico's Ramirez will instead challenge WBA cruiserweight champion Arsen Goulemarian. The bout is due to take place in March. Boxing Scene has learned that March 30th is the working date for the recently agreed upon title fight.
Why'd they go after Goulemarian? Do they see him as being more beatable than Breidis?
Perhaps. Stylistically they do. Or perhaps they view Arsen Goulemarian's promotional situation as being more beatable than Breidis's. Breidis is with Kale and Nisei Sarland. He's with Wasserman. They've got some money.
They've got something. Enough that you don't want to let it go to a purse bid, because if it does, they might place the winning bid.
Or maybe you win it, but you end up spending more money trying to win it than you initially wanted to. In a strange twist of fate, the development leaves Latvia's Breidis back on course for a rematch with lineal champion Opetaia, who already beat him. A deal is not yet finalized, at least not at the time that this article was published, though all signs point to their bout taking place as the chief support to the February 17th Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk undisputed heavyweight championship in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The IBF has yet to confirm that its belt will be at stake for the Opetaia versus Breidis rematch, though very likely will be the end result. The title was vacated when Sydney's Opetaia opted to move forward with his December 23rd bout versus unbeaten, unranked Ellis Zurdo. For that, the IBF stripped him.
They demanded that Breidis had to be next, even though Breidis wanted a little bit more time and agreed to step aside. There was supposed to be a deal already in place for them to fight this year, which they're doing anyway.
It's what they're doing anyway. The IBF stripping Opetaia the way that they did was very confusing and farcical looking back. Hindsight being 2020, you stripped him of the title because he wasn't fighting Breidis. Now he's fighting him anyway, and he may be fighting for the title anyway. So you shouldn't have stripped him in the first place. place.
Stupid.
Zurdo's fighting Arsen Goulemarian, WBA champion, unbeaten, and a fighter that perhaps Golden Boy feels is a cheaper alternative to Breidis, who is promoted by Wasserman.
Maybe they went after him because they don't have to pay him as much as they would have had to pay Breidis.
No purse bid to have to worry about, potentially making the fight more expensive to put on, since now you'd have to beat out Breidis' promoters to get the rights to the fight. Maybe that's why they went after Arsen Goulemarian, even though they had a clear path to an alphabet title and the right to fight for one.
The fights.
Breidis is 39 years old. He's 11 years older than Jai Opetaia, who already beat him well over a year ago, and well over a year later, Breidis hasn't fought since then, but Jai Opetaia has. 2 times. The knockout win over Jordan Thompson, and the other knockout win over Zerto. So Jai's had his tune-up fights, his keep busy fights. The night of, he's going to be sharp, whereas Breidis, he's going to be older, slower, and less active. So I don't have any illusions about what Jai Opetaia is going to do to Breidis. This may be Breidis' swan song, his retirement fight.
I picked Jai Opetaia to beat him the first time, and I think here and now, he's going to beat him the second time.
As it pertains to Mexico's own Zurdo Ramirez, he bids to become a 2-division champion as he enters just his second cruiserweight fight. His 10-round win over former WBO light heavyweight champion Joe Smith Jr. last October came at a contracted weight of 193 pounds, but was enough to move into world title contention. He's fighting Arsen Goulemarian now. Arsen Goulemarian is best described as a mid-range to inside fighter, a puncher, a brawler, a bona fide cruiserweight, something that Joe Smith Jr. wasn't.
But Arsen Goulemarian, like Breidis, he hasn't boxed in over a year. He hasn't seen action since 2022. He sat out all of 2023.
What happened to that order last year? The order that came down from the WBA for him to fight his mandatory challenger, former champion Uniel Dorticos. What happened with that?
Nothing. That's why we're here.
If I had to guess, neither Arsen Goulemarian or Uniel Dorticos have big money behind them, so financing that fight in spite of it being ordered was probably difficult. Difficult enough that the WBA is now willing to look the other way for the fight having not happened.
They're willing to let him fight Zerto in spite of that order because at least with Zerto, there's somebody to pay for the fight, whereas with Uniel, who the hell was going to pay for that?
Now, whether or not Zerto can actually win this fight is a different question. In his last fight, you saw Zerto using lateral movement, moving and punching. He wasn't spending a bunch of time in the pocket like he normally does, so maybe that's how he means to beat Arsen Goulemarian.
He's changing his strategy. He's up there at cruiserweight now. He can't spend that much time in the pocket without risking getting knocked out.
May have been physically imposing and statuesque and strong as a super middleweight and a light heavyweight, but at cruiserweight, there are bigger, stronger, more physically imposing fighters than you are, and you don't want to fight them in the phone booth. So I'd wager Zerto's going to move around, he's going to box and punch. And whether or not that's going to work for him, well, we'll talk about that in another video. And finally, north of cruiserweight at heavyweight. A Twitter user that goes by the name A-Team, friend to the channel, said, AJ is allowed to take a fight like this. Not a champion, fought plenty of contenders, and Ngannou's last fight somewhat makes him credible, even if Fury barely prepared. To which veteran fighter, all-time great Lennox Lewis replied, in my opinion, this fight adds zero credibility to AJ's resume. He's supposed to win this fight, and when he does, what does he gain or learn by beating someone in his second heavyweight fight? Well, what did Tyson Fury gain? What did he learn? If he was good enough for the heavyweight champion of the world, why would he not be good enough for a former champion in Anthony Joshua?
That's my question.
Lennox continued. If he loses, that's an absolute disaster.
You could say the exact same thing about Tyson Fury's fight with him, couldn't you?
Lennox continued. The same stood for Fury, and it almost cost him everything. The Fury fight set the tone, set the precedence for this one. Thus, anyone poo-pooing all over this thing is doing so by glossing over that fight. And maybe you want to. Maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe it's all about sweeping that under the rug, pretending it didn't happen, so you don't have to give AJ credit if he outdoes Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, who went out there and embarrassed himself, embarrassed the sport. Tyson Fury, who's widely perceived as being better, all around just better than Anthony Joshua, levels above him, went in there late last year and stunk out the joint with that same Francis Ngannou. And if not for that, we wouldn't be getting this.
Lennox says that if he loses, he being Anthony Joshua, then it's an absolute disaster.
But Lennox Lewis himself is the one who said it's a fight that he's supposed to be able to win. See, I don't think Lennox is worried about Anthony losing. I think he's worried about Anthony winning and how he wins. That if he goes in there and does the demolition job or just a better job overall than Tyson Fury, you kind of have to give him credit. Tyson Fury was widely perceived as being better than Anthony. But if Anthony goes in there with yet another common opponent between them and he does a better job, how could you not give him credit?
That's the running theme. That's the trend.
Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury have approximately 4 common opponents between them, and Anthony consistently knocks those guys out where Tyson Fury consistently fights them to decisions. You know, they both fought Kingpin Johnson. When he fought Fury, he fought him to a decision. When he fought AJ knocked him out. The same applies to Vladimir Klitschko. The same applies to Otto Wallin.
They both knocked out Dillian White.
And now that Tyson Fury has shared the ring with Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua is about to, we'll see how that works out. That if history is any indicator of things to come, what usually happens when Anthony fights a guy that fought Tyson Fury, usually he outdoes him. Usually he knocks the guy out.
It's not one way, though. Tyson Fury's about to fight a guy that Anthony fought. Guy Anthony lost to. He's about to fight Oleksandr Usyk.
They're both facing common opponents with each other in the months of February through March. So if Anthony makes it through Francis Ngannou and does the demolition job on him that Tyson Fury didn't do, but Tyson doesn't make it past Oleksandr Usyk, he doesn't beat him.
What does it mean?
This is all about maintaining this narrative that Tyson Fury is so much better, so many levels above Anthony Joshua. That's what it's all about. Though if he loses to Usyk, the same as Anthony Joshua did, that will affect how he's remembered and where he's ranked in this era, because up until this point, people have been of the opinion that he's levels above Anthony Joshua. The gap between them closes a bit if he loses to the same Usyk that beat Anthony, and what other common opponents they have, how Anthony consistently outperforms Tyson Fury against the same people.
Triangle theories don't work.
I know they don't. I say it all the time. Triangle theories don't work in the sport of boxing, but it stops being a triangle when you have 4 and 5 and even 6 common opponents with the same guy. At that point, if you're outperforming the other guy, it's not a triangle, it's not a triangle theory, it's that you're better than that guy.
You might be.
Unless a fight takes place between yous to decide who's better, to decide who's really the better fighter, who's really the better boxer. If Fury loses to Usyk, that may not happen, because if Anthony takes care of business against Francis Ngannou, but he falters with Usyk,
that kills the fight between them.
For Lennox Lewis, it's not worrying about Anthony, worrying if he loses. He's worried that he's gonna win. Moreover, he's worried that he's going to outperform Tyson Fury, because in his own words, that's a fight that Anthony's supposed to win.
Yeah, Tyson was supposed to win it too, but you saw what happened.
It'll be harder to shade AJ moving forward if he once again outperforms Tyson Fury.